In the past, I've been very critical of adult animation. I've made it very clear that for every adult series I like, such as South Park or Drawn Together, there's always one like Brickleberry or Modern Family Guy that just doesn't understand what adults really want. It's all shock and disturbing without any real substance. These are my biggest pet peeve shows. No effort, no creativity, no anything at all. Now, imagine, if you will, one of these shows being attached to a beloved pre-existing property, specifically, Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy was one of the original 3 Nicktoons right alongside Doug and Rugrats. And it was known for being a little insane, to say the least. Created by John Should Be Behind Bars Chris Felucci, this show became known for its gross-out jokes, nonsensical animation, and being wonderfully disturbing. Good show! However, the production history alone would make a better show in and of itself. Seriously, somebody make a Netflix series about how this thing got made. It would be wild. To sum it up, John was an extreme perfectionist. If you did anything he didn't like, your work got scrapped and you'd have to do it all over again. This included his rule of never drawing the same face twice. What does this mean? Were you not listening? It's exactly what it sounds like. Artists were told that they should never draw a character with the same facial expression twice, or that work would be thrown out. Perfectionism can be good sometimes. It means that you really care about the quality of your work. It means that you want a good product. However, this is not good when you have deadlines to meet. In the business world, you cannot turn in your project whenever you like, even in show business, because show business is still business. So many times, John K. missed his deadline entirely, causing Nickelodeon to go into a frenzy. After 2 seasons of this, as well as John K. getting far raunchier with episodes like Man's Best Friend, Nickelodeon decided that it would be best for them to part ways. So John K. was kicked off of his own show, and he was replaced by Games Animation. The voice of Ren was now provided by the voice of Stimpy, Billy West. People seem to be very divided on these seasons. Some say that they're not quite as good as the originals, but still good. Some say that they're pale imitations. For me, it really depends on the episode. Some, like Doubleheader, are really enjoyable, while others, like, say, Hard Times for Haggis, are not. To be fair, the original seasons were like this too. Not every season was entirely perfect. Each one had at least one blemish, but the blemishes never turned out all that bad. Even after Ren and Stimpy ended, it proved to be very popular. Popular enough for the new TNN, now known as Spike TV, to reach out to John K. and to say, "We would like a new Ren and Stimpy show. But not just any Ren and Stimpy show. One for the people who grew up with the original." Considering that the show would come out in 2003, and the original was cancelled in the mid-90s, all of the old fans had grown up. So why not make a show for their age group? An adult age group, specifically targeting males 18 to 35. And John K. said, "Yeah, I want to do Ren and Stimpy again, sign me up." Honestly, who could balk at such a suggestion? The guy loved Ren and Stimpy so much that he was willing to hold back episode upon episode from airing at Nickelodeon just to make sure that they were perfect. As he says in one of the previews for the show, if he was going to do Ren and Stimpy for the rest of his life, he'd be happy. Unfortunately for him, that didn't really work out so well since the show only lasted 6 to 7 episodes. Yeah, I'll talk about that more in a minute. So, what happened? What made Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon fail so badly? Well, there's a lot of reasons actually, and not all of them have to do with John K.'s strange work ethic or, as we now know, sexual desires. But yes, those pedophilic allegations actually do factor into this show. I'll save that for the end since that's one of the biggest bombshells we have. But anyways, let's take a look at how Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon is fundamentally broken. First off, I want to say that this thing was advertised really well. All of Spike TV's original animated shows had a lot of marketing, but this one seems to be the one that they pushed the most. Why not? It was an established property and people knew what it was. So those who grew up on the original would be excited to see this. One of my favorite previews is the one where it shows Ren and Stimpy on a bus. It's fun, it gets you invested, it shows you that the characters have returned for a new adult series, and the best part, it doesn't show any clips from the actual show. You see, that's pretty clever because if they showed you any of the actual show, people would raise an eyebrow and go, "This isn't right, this isn't what I wanted to see." Sure enough, that's exactly what happened when the show came out. Very quickly, people realized that it was not the original Ren and Stimpy. In more ways than just the content itself, of course. Yeah, the content is more adult, but it still doesn't feel like Ren and Stimpy. One of the things that made the original work so well was getting crap past the radar. So many things that they put into their episodes would absolutely not fly in any other children's show, but somehow, they were able to pull it off. And that was basically the fun of it. It was a quote-unquote kid-friendly show that was really anything but. When you take the edge away, you have something that's for adults in name only. It's almost the opposite of the Ren and Stimpy show. In that case, instead of being a kid show that was actually meant for adults, this time, it's an adult show that's super immature in all forms of humor. What's the most stereotypical adult joke you can think of? Does it have to do with poop? Boobs? Butt cracks? Anything? Well, it's in here. And let me tell you, I use jokes incredibly loosely. All it is look, poop, look, scantily clad women. And that's the joke. And again, joke is using massive air quotes here. I've said this time and time again, but simply having a shocking substance or simply having an adult reference is not a joke. You can't say the word penis and expect that in and of itself to be the joke. There has to be something built around it. For example, look at the episode of Drawn Together, Captain Girl. Here they do use penis as a joke, but they actually have something around it. Captain Hero gets a letter in the form of a Mad Lib from a villain aptly named the Mad Libber. When you fill this out, it's supposed to tell you his plan and what he's done to certain people, and rather than actually fill it out correctly, the Drawn Together gang decides to write penis in all the blanks. Then they burst out laughing because it makes no sense, but then Captain Hero remembers that his sidekick is dead, then bursts into tears. This is a joke. Having Ren and Stimpy eating boogers or grabbing giant logs of crap from the fire chief's toilet is not a joke. They don't do anything with it. All it's there to do is make you shocked and disturbed, not laugh. But the thing is that it can't even do that right. I've talked about this too. It's called shock fatigue. If all you have is gross out with no joke, and all you have is sex material with no joke, it's gonna get very boring. And this show especially doesn't have any spark to it because of its length. Ren and Stimpy was mainly 11 minutes for a reason. It's because it works best in 11-minute intervals. John K. also works best in 11-minute intervals, but this gets stretched out to, I don't even know. Sometimes it's 22 minutes, sometimes it's 28 minutes, and sometimes it's 40 minutes. These things drag. And let me be clear, they don't drag because they have to put so much content into the episodes that they just naturally get longer. No. John K. clearly doesn't have enough content to fill these episodes with, so what he does is extend the jokes and scenes, making them last forever. Take a look at the frog from Ren Seeks Help when he crawls across the screen. This goes on forever. Or how's about almost all the jokes in Altruists? They don't end. I know that a lot of people talk about the apparently disturbing material that's in this show, but what about the filler? Isn't that the thing that really makes it hard to watch? I could so easily chop these things up and make them 11-minute episodes, cutting out huge chunks or maybe even entire scenes, and you wouldn't miss a thing. That's just how little anything happens in this show. But it won't do anyone any good to just talk about this show as a whole. In order to really understand what makes this thing fail, I need to talk about all 6/7 episodes individually and not as a whole unit. Oh yeah, we're doing this. Bear with me, it's gonna be wild. First off, we're going to discuss the honorary first episode, Man's Best Friend. This is considered to be episode 0 of the show, thereby technically meaning that this thing has 7 episodes. See, there was an episode from the 2nd season of the Nickelodeon show called Ren's Toothache, and it was supposed to be paired with this episode called Man's Best Friend. However, Man's Best Friend was unable to air, so Big House Blues, the show's pilot, was put in its place. What made Man's Best Friend too hot for TV? Well, there's a scene where Ren beats a guy with an oar, there's a bunch of crap and tobacco references, so Nickelodeon thought it wouldn't be fit for kids, and Spike decided to air the episode in adult party cartoon to make up for the loss. I have to say that this was actually a genius marketing move. Why? Well, people didn't exactly like adult party cartoon, that's no mystery. So starting off with this one was a really good idea, because those who were tuning in for the very first time would believe that the show itself would be a lot like this. Even though word about the episode had already spread, and most people knew that this episode was made in the original series run, they'd believe that if this was airing as part of Adult Party Cartoon, then the rest of the episodes must share its style. Sadly for the viewers, they were wrong. So, Man's Best Friend. A lot of people are really mixed on this one. Some say it's too violent, some say it was great. I say it was good. Not great, but good. Honestly, I do wish Adult Party Cartoon was more like this. Instead of having overt adult stuff, it includes adult elements while not making them too on the nose. It has a good flow, it doesn't drag, it's funny, good start. But this doesn't really count as an episode of Adult Party Cartoon, which unfortunately means that I can't give points in the show's favor. Oh well. Now let's move on to the true first episode, Onward and Upward. Back in the Nickelodeon days, John K. kept getting letter after letter after letter begging him to make an episode that had nothing but gross-out jokes. They wanted to be extra disgusted and utterly disturbed. As it turns out, John K. was more than happy to do this, but Nickelodeon, on the other hand, was not. They felt that John K. would not be able to do this in a kid-friendly way, so the idea was forcibly shelved. Well, John saw his chance now that Ren and Stimpy was back, so he made Onward and Upward. If you're ever up one night and you really can't sleep, or if you don't want to take any sleeping pills, turn this one on and you'll be out in no time. It's utterly boring. I get it. It's supposed to be disgusting. I don't find it disgusting though because the shock fatigue kicks in so early. This only has gross-out jokes, exactly as described. But that's not exactly a good thing. All it is Ren and Stimpy eating boogers, snot, and vomit. That's it. They don't do anything funny with it, it's just them eating excrement. It's not even that gross. It's just mildly uncomfortable before it starts becoming mundane when you get used to the humor. They don't do anything to shake it up or vary anything. It's just flat. The story is that the duo are poor people living in a homeless man's mouth, and after ages and ages of doing nothing, they decide to move out of the mouth and instead move into a spittoon in a seedy bar. This is where they eat bodily fluids a bunch, have gay sex, get chased out, then move back to the homeless man's mouth. The end. I skipped nothing of importance, except maybe an Ask Dr. Stupid segment. If you want to see just how bad some of the pacing issues are here, take a look at the scene where Ren and Stimpy are in the homeless man's mouth, and Ren's butt gets attacked by the uvula. This took forever to get across, and there are so many gags just like it. And the stuff in the spittoon drags just as much. It doesn't even build. It starts off with the worst right away and it stays on the same level. I found this one nearly impossible to watch. Every time I try, I keep falling asleep. It's lifeless, it's dull, it doesn't even try. That's Onward and Upward. It's a great substitute for NyQuil, but that's about it. Now, we're gonna talk about that infamous one. The one that Mr. Enter and Phantom Strider have called one of the, if not the, worst cartoon episode of all time. Ren Seeks Help. What do I think of this utterly panned, horrifying, demented, disturbing thing? 3 words. Cool your jets. I would like to say that before these internet reviewers and bandwagoners talked about this episode, it was considered to be the least bad episode of Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon. And I still somewhat agree with that. It's definitely the least bad. Not good at all. I'd give it about a 5 out of 10. Some of these people that have reviewed it, I'm not exactly sure that they've seen the other 5 episodes to compare it with. I can understand how some people may be disturbed by this episode, especially if they're only comparing it to the original Ren and Stimpy, but to call this one the worst of the lot? No. No. Ren and Stimpy get in a fight that we don't get to see happen on screen, and now Stimpy has had it with Ren. The constant abuse, the constant neglect, the constant everything that Ren does. So Ren actually feels bad for once, and he goes to, as he says in his own words, seek help. So after a long scene of him walking where nothing happens, he stumbles across fan-favorite character, Mr. Horse. Ren tells Mr. Horse about his childhood where he'd abused bugs and small animals. Then he moved on to the frog, and he'd torture this frog constantly. And then when the frog was begging for death, Ren decided to keep him alive because he got off to the knowledge that the frog was suffering. The frog keeps demanding and insisting that Ren kills him, but Ren keeps refusing. Eventually, Ren's parents get involved and force him to kill the frog. Ren decides to go against their orders and throw the frog away. Mr. Horse blows up at Ren, saying that he's crazy and that he's not actually a psychologist. What? Ren beats him to death, he gets hauled off to the funny farm, the frog tries to kill himself again, and then fails the end. Can you tell what's good about this episode, or at least better than the rest by comparison? Compare that summary to Onward and Upward. If you still can't figure it out, things happen. It only drags once or twice, so it's not really boring. It's a little off-putting and a little disturbing with all the animal torture in this episode, especially the part where the frog's getting his guts shot out by Ren's tricycle. But stuff happens. There's actually content in this episode. If this episode was cut down to 11 minutes, I'd say we were missing out. This story needed to be this long, and again, it's not great or even really good. There are still some things that linger, and there's a lot of off-putting elements. That, and it's definitely not funny at all. There's also a lot of sound mixing errors, like Stimpy's crying drowning Ren out in the beginning, or this inexcusable animation error right here. But for the most part, Ren Seeks Help is somewhat solid. Again though, it's not really funny because all the jokes are the same thing. Ren's a cruel and sadistic individual, and he loves hurting others. But they can still be considered jokes because they have substance, setups, punchlines, and relevance to the story. For example, Ren's doing terrible things to the frog like lighting firecrackers and sticking it up its butthole. Meanwhile, present-day Ren is describing it like it's a fond memory, like he's an old man reminiscing on his days gone by. It's not great, but it's interesting at the very least. Yeah, it's disturbing, but so is the rest of the show. And if we're gonna be comparing it to the other episodes, especially some really nasty stuff we're gonna get later, this doesn't even come close to being the worst. I'm really glad that the bandwagon's starting to die down because we really need to stop, take a breath, and be thankful for what we got, because it could always be worse. Oh hey, look, it's worse. I want to like this one so badly. This should have been great. Ralph Bakshi is here, and he does an amazing job. Ralph Bakshi's already a live-action cartoon, so putting him in an animated setting, especially one as unhinged as this, was perfect. He's big, he's loud, he's got a strange voice, and everything he does is like something out of a sitcom. In fact, John Kay says that this episode is basically a documentary on his life with Ralph. What does he mean by that? Well, for those of you who don't know, back when John Kay was starting out in his animation career, he was Ralph Bakshi's protege. Everything he learned, at least everything good, he learned from Ralph. Is it all starting to click now? Basically, everything that the fire chief does in this episode was based on something that the real-life Ralph did, while Ren and Stimpy serve as stand-ins for John in these stories. So it's basically as if someone got a whole bunch of in-jokes and then animated them. And that's exactly how Fire Dogs 2 feels. It picks up right where Fire Dogs 1 left off, and suddenly the fire chief transforms into Ralph Bakshi. The rest of the episode is him derping around with Eddie and Tommy with no real aim. It almost feels like a bunch of vignettes stapled together to form an episode. That's not exactly a bad thing, since Ren and Stimpy isn't exactly known for its stories. And to this episode's credit, it embraces that, and it knows exactly what it's supposed to be. It's not trying to be Ren Seeks Help where it has an actual story, or like Onward and Upward where it thinks it has a story, but it still drags. A lot. Especially those scenes in the bathroom. Or how's about the scene where Ren and Stimpy see the fire chief's apartment for the first time? This scene doesn't end. You feel every second tick by as it just lingers and expects this mess to be a joke. So what do I mean when I say that this whole thing is just animated in-jokes? Whenever Ralph says something in this episode, the real-life Ralph does a great job portraying his emotions and giving some good energy. After all, Ralph Bakshi playing Ralph Bakshi isn't exactly a stretch. In all seriousness though, just by the delivery and the writing, you can tell that these are in-jokes, and they're in-jokes that we're not a part of. Even though what Ralph does is amusing, you can't help but feel like you're missing something, or like you can't really get the full joke. If I started quoting things that my psycho ex-college roommate said, you might laugh a little, but you wouldn't really get the full joke until I explained that he was the kind of guy who would punch metal parking signs or masturbate in front of people's faces. Only then would you get the full joke. But for Fire Dogs 2, it's basically the situation of, you had to be there, but you weren't. Now, how are Ren and Stimpy in this episode? To be honest, they don't really do anything. It's the Ralph Bakshi show featuring Eddie and Tommy. Those are the names that the fire chief gives Ren and Stimpy, by the way. They have the infamous flute dance, they have one or two lines here and there, and to their credit, they do have the one joke in the show that makes me laugh.
Pals like to punch each other, right? Go ahead, Eddie. Give it your best shot.
They're also the ones that contribute the most to the episode's drag. They're the ones that take forever to look around the apartment, they're the ones to take forever to smoke a cigarette incorrectly. The only reason this episode isn't any worse is because of Ralph. He's just such a joy that he makes this episode tolerable but not objectively good. That's why I want to like this episode, because of him. But I can't ignore all the problems that this thing has, so yeah, it's my second favorite episode of the show. But that's not saying a whole lot because I don't like any of these. Except Man's Best Friend, but that's not really an episode. The last thing I want to say is that this episode's actually hurt by being a sequel to one of the most beloved episodes of the original show. John K. says that Fire Dogs 1 was written in an afternoon, and I believe it. It's not polished, but it's definitely a good episode. It's simple, sure, but it's fast-paced, funny, and effective. All the things that Fire Dogs 2 is not. And it doesn't help that they aired this thing before Fire Dogs 2. Alright, so Fire Dogs 2, when it originally aired, was split in half. And the first half had Fire Dogs 1 going before it, which definitely set the stage for failure because you're automatically going to compare it to what you just saw. One cartoon is good and the other is not. But hey, at least on the DVD they combined both parts of Fire Dogs 2 into one whole cohesive mess. So at least there's that, right? So, Fire Dogs 2. What could have been? What could have been? Before we proceed, let's talk about the airing of this show, because that actually factors into not only the episode we just talked about, but also the last 3 episodes of the show that we've yet to talk about, and I'm definitely not stalling because I don't want to talk about those things. In short, the show didn't get to air all of its episodes. It got canned after episode 3. The other Spike TV cartoons, Gary the Rat and Stirperella, got to air all of their episodes, and in fact, Gary the Rat got to have its own finale. Adult Party Cartoon did not. Fans, critics, and casual audience members alike hated this thing. It may have been the most viewed show on Spike TV's adult animation block, but its high ratings were nowhere near enough to offset the critical outrage. This, combined with the increasingly vulgar content in the next episodes, caused Spike TV to not air the rest of the episodes at all in North America. Those other 3 episodes didn't get to see the light of day until Adult Party Cartoon was released on DVD. Yes, this mess has a DVD, and it's one of the most bizarre DVD releases I've ever seen. they don't call it Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon, they call it Ren and Stimpy The Lost Episodes featuring Adult Party Cartoon, because the Adult Party Cartoon brand must have been so poisonous that they couldn't have put it on the DVD or no one would buy it. I gave 2 reasons as to why these episodes were never aired, but people keep debating on which one is the primary reason. Was it the content, or was it the bad reaction that the show got? Or was it a surprise third option, the length? None of these things followed the traditional 22-minute format, so they would be really hard to air. John K's been asked multiple times as to what happened, but he keeps muddling up the story, so we may never know what really happened. So I say, I don't think it matters. All that does matter is that these things didn't air. Naked Beach Frenzy is animated porn. I don't like porn, I don't like this. Moving on. Now, I want to make one thing very clear. Whether you're young, old, whatever, please listen to me when I say, I hate altruists! This is the worst, the absolute worst anything with Ren and Stimpy on it. I know that this is a scalding hot take. The worst episode is usually considered to be Naked Beach Frenzy or Stimpy's Pregnant, but I don't care. This physically hurts to watch. While I have more ire towards Naked Beach Frenzy because that has some depictions of one of John K's victims in it, this thing as an episode and product, this hurts. It's grueling. It's mind-numbing. It's insufferable to watch. You want to know why? Well, take a look at that runtime. 40 minutes. Meanwhile, this thing has barely enough content to fit 11 minutes. Let me tell you the entire story. Ren and Stimpy are all of a sudden altruists. They find a poor woman with a headless son who don't have anything and live in a hole. Ren and Stimpy steal from rich people, then they chop down a forest to make them a house, then the police come by to bust them, but psych, they're not in trouble at all, and that's the end. That's the whole episode, and once again, I skipped over nothing important. 40 minutes of animation can be condensed to, what was that, 15 seconds, 20 seconds max? This has some of the worst pacing in anything I've ever seen. Even the non sequiturs go on too long, like the woman's nipples talking because they're cold, or Stimpy being an Italian construction worker? What? In other more competent shows, this would take 30 seconds tops. But some of these, like the construction worker one, that goes on for like, 2 minutes? 3 minutes? It feels like 10. But if you want the worst example, there's a scene at the end where Ren and Stimpy are showing the widow everything they got for her, and I swear, it's just 3 minutes of them showing off a TV, a grandfather clock, grandpa, and whatever. It just doesn't stop. Nor does it build or have anything really insane to keep your attention. A lot of adult party cartoon has this problem, yeah, but it seems to be the worst in altruists. There was apparently a lot of work put into this thing, but it doesn't show. Not even the animation is fun. It's relatively subdued compared to the rest of the episodes. And if you told me that this thing was a parody of the Three Stooges if you didn't show me the title card, I wouldn't know. I legitimately do not know why they made this thing as long as they did. Was it just to have bragging rights about how long the episode is? Was it just because they wanted to shoehorn as many bad jokes in as they could? I don't know. And truthfully, I don't want to know because I think the truth would scare me. Listen, I don't care that Mr. and Mrs. Pipe come back for a cameo. I don't care that Plucky Duck gets spoofed in this. It's not worth it. They don't make any jokes out of it, nor do they keep it interesting enough to hold your attention, so what's the point? This whole thing was a giant waste. Altruists also has the infamous sawing scene, and for those wonderfully blessed and fortunate people that don't know what this is, it's a really try-hard and cringy moment that simulates anal sex with Ren tying a saw to his crotch and sawing a log on Stimpy's butt. It's a really embarrassing example of John K thinking that something alluding to a raunchy thing is automatically funny, but it just comes across as foolish. You don't have to try so hard, John. I mean, you were able to make people laugh in the original show. Oh wait, no, that was Bob Camp. Never mind. This episode's story is the only one that John K. didn't conceive in the Nickelodeon era, and he only made it for adult party cartoon, and it shows. It really shows. Truth be told, the concept of Ren and Stimpy trying to be heroic do-gooders all while making people's lives worse for the sake of improving the lives of two specific people has a lot of promise. It's just that they don't do anything good with it, so they squander one of the best ideas they had for this series. You want to know what the cherry on top is? It's that the interview for this thing on the DVD is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Vincent Waller, Eddie Fitzgerald, and Eric Bauza, who I'm sure are all high because they just can't stop laughing and they don't seem to be able to focus on any topic, just keep going on and on about how good this episode is and how after this, John K's ready to make his own movie. Are you serious? He can barely make something that's 11 minutes. How do you expect him to make a whole movie? What's he gonna do? Stretch things out, add stock music, and make sure that there's a bunch of cartoon sound effects every second? So that's Altruists. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Stimpy's pregnant, the last one, finally. Guess what? I don't like this one either. I can copy and paste what I said for Onward and Upward here, and nothing would change. It's slow, it tries too hard to be gross, but it's not gross, it's actually boring. What else can I really say? Well, I can say that this one was basically fan service. All those people that shipped Ren and Stimpy as a couple and didn't get their fill in Onward and Upward would, in theory, love this one. Unfortunately, it just didn't have enough to actually make it good. What's the most generic pregnancy joke you can think of? Strange cravings, mood swings, and all that kind of stuff? Yep, it's all here and it's all done by the numbers. There's also stuff with Ren being an abusive husband, sort of. It's complicated, but basically all he really does is just talk on the phone to his friends all day and brag about how it was his seed that made the barren Stimpy get pregnant, but it doesn't really lead to anything, so moving on. The most frustrating part about Stimpy's Pregnant is that it thinks it has a story. It tries to have a beginning, middle, and end, but nothing really happens. You can only gather that they're trying to do as much just by the different stages of pregnancy, but other than that, it's just a bunch of disjointed jokes that don't really flow. And then there's that birthing scene at the end that is probably the closest this show has ever come to making me feel uncomfortable. Then at the end, they reveal that Stimpy wasn't actually pregnant, he was just constipated. But then they turned the crap into a baby because Dr. Mr. Horse, who's alive again, didn't have the heart to tell the happy parents. This is kinda confusing, but why? This seems like it would be a decent Ren and Stimpy twist. Well, the opening monologue here that, say it with me, goes on forever, talks about how in this episode, Stimpy is going to play the part of a woman. But that's not really what happens. Stimpy's still a man here, but only sometimes. It's complicated and I don't really feel like getting into it, so let's just not. Plain and simple, Stimpy's Pregnant is just boring. And that's what can be said about basically all of this show. It's just trying too hard to be edgy and in your face and the new South Park or whatever, but it's not smart enough to get the job done. But enough of being negative for now, let's take a break and look at the positives, because there are some. The animation, while being sometimes off-model and of course trying too hard to be gross, is still pretty lively and fluid most of the time. For the most part, the colors are lively, the backgrounds are interesting, and John K's never draw the same face twice style is on full display. And it does a pretty good job at keeping things interesting, unlike some of his other work. The voice work is hit and miss in this show. John K is sometimes good as Ren and sometimes not. In episodes like Ren Seeks Help, he nails it, but in episodes like Stimpy's Pregnant, it's a definite miss. It's become really clear that John K's forgotten how to do the Ren voice, but in all fairness, the deeper voice doesn't really bother me. It's more of the delivery, which, like the show itself, is just trying too hard to put the audience on edge. There's a lot more shouting and screeching and all those kinds of things that Ren and Stimpy was known for, but way more of it so it dulls its effectiveness. It's kind of like how Enter the Florpus made Zim scream half of his lines because that's how people remembered him speaking. It's like that here. It feels a little bit forced. Only, unlike Enter the Florpus, it doesn't have the good writing or story to back it up. Although it does have Eric Bauza, who, I must admit, is a really good Stimpy. Billy West, the original voice actor for Stimpy, refused to take part in the show because he felt that it was so bad that it would damage his career. So Eric Bauza, a brand new up-and-coming voice actor, was hired to replace him, and for what it's worth, he does a really good job. Well, he doesn't sound exactly like Billy West's Stimpy. He does do his own thing enough and do a good enough impression to make it work. The title cards are also really well made. The only one I'm not super crazy about is Fire Dogs 2 because it's just the first one with a 2 slapped on it. But other than that, we got Ren Seeks Help, which is messed up, but a lot of fun. Onward and Upward, it depicts the episode perfectly, even having spittoons on the banister. That was a nice touch. Naked Beach Frenzy, it tricks you into thinking that the episode's gonna be fun. Altruists, this is the closest that they actually come to parodying the Three Stooges in the episode, so good on them, I guess. Stimpy's Pregnant, okay, I'll give you that one, it's just kind of alright. So yeah, the title cards, they're good. But isn't it bad that one of the best things I can say about the show is at least it has good title cards? I'll bet you think we're done here, but if you look at the runtime of the video, you can tell that we've got a lot more to talk about. This show damaged Ren and Stimpy. They were not able to appear in anything else for years after this. Viacom, the owners of Ren and Stimpy, became too scared to use the characters because of the show's failure. They did a few small things like putting the characters in Nicktoons MLB, airing the episodes on Nicktoons Network to see if people were still interested, or making some merchandise. But that's as far as it went. It wasn't until recently, and by recently I mean just a couple years ago, where they announced the reboot that we totally need, where they felt comfortable enough to use Ren and Stimpy once again. Adult Party Cartoon was so hated that it wasn't seen on TV again after it was axed. The reputation of the whole series was tarnished. Gone were the days where people could say that Ren and Stimpy was good from beginning to end. Now, they know that whenever the creator was at the helm, they always ran the risk of having something like this. But what am I saying? We can't blame John K. He was totally innocent. This was all because of executive meddling, right? It was those big bad corporate suits that try to ruin art, right? If you believe that, I've got some oceanfront property in Kansas to sell ya. Do you really think we can trust John K? First of all, everything in Adult Party Cartoon is right up his alley. The raunchiness, the sex stuff, the gross out, the delays in production. It's all John K. Additionally, when he got fired from Nickelodeon back in the day, he made up a ton of stories to explain what happened, and none of them involved taking responsibility for what he'd done. Whenever John K knows he's made a mistake and he doesn't want to admit it, he will jump through some massive hoops in order to tell his tale. But he never seems to make anything that's actually believable. The network wasn't really able to tell him no. That's why these things go on forever. That's why he was able to get away with first draft writing. And of course, that's why this show didn't last. John K. really seems to be at his best when he has people to tell him no. Similar to George Lucas, the reason that Star Wars ended up being as good as it was because George Lucas wasn't the only guy in charge. Whenever he had a bad idea, people were able to stop him. Then when the prequels rolled around, the studio seemed to forget about that fact and decided to make him the guy in charge. That's why we got things like Jar Jar, Watto, and these amazing love scenes in Attack of the Clones. And then the less said about the remakes, the better. Same goes for Ren and Stimpy. No matter what John K. tries to tell you, he was not the only one to make the original show good. You can credit a lot of the good stuff to Bob Camp, who was always there right by John's side helping him get these things off the ground. But once again, people didn't remember this, and they gave John full control of Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon, and look how badly he screwed it up. We can even see this in the unproduced episodes because yes, there were unproduced episodes. Let's talk about them, shall we? One of the episodes was about George Liquor, American, taking Ren and Stimpy out into the woods so that they could become men. This one seems okay. Not great, not bad, just okay. Another episode was where Ren and Stimpy switch roles. One where Ren was gonna be an idiot and Stimpy was gonna be a jerk. Didn't they already do this? The most infamous of these unproduced episodes is Life Sucks. This one was gonna be the prequel to Ren Seeks Help. Apparently this is what made Stimpy so upset with Ren. It's all about Ren telling the story of the Children's Crusade, and that's kind of it. There's an animatic to this thing, and let me tell you, it makes me happy that this thing never got made. It's like what people seem to think that Ren Seeks Help is. It's just loud, it's cruel, it's dark, and it's really not fun. John K. said that if this was finished, it would have been the greatest episode of Ren and Stimpy ever. Yeah, I kinda doubt that. So those are the 3 episodes of Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon that never got made. There were no others. Nope, no others whatsoever. Wait, no, that's not true. There's one more. Not a lot of people talk about this one because not too many people know about it, and for good reason. And I think that if this episode got made, it would have been the worst Ren and Stimpy thing ever. Yes, worse than Altruists, no question. So just how bad is it? And furthermore, what is it? My friends, allow me to introduce you to the Succubus. For those of you who aren't aware, in 2018, John K. was accused of being a pedophile by 2 women, Robin Bird and Katie Rice. Katie Rice actually worked on Adult Party Cartoon, and you can see her here in the very uncomfortable DVD interview. Run, Katie, run. But Robin Bird is the one we're going to be focusing on today. She was a huge fan of Ren and Stimpy, such a big fan, in fact, that she reached out to John K. to get in touch with him and really learn more about her favorite show. She also wanted some animation and art advice because she wanted to make her own cartoon when she got older. Well, John K. decided to fly her out, give her a tour of Spumco Studios, then do terrible things to her. Then they got in a relationship because Robin was too young to know what she was doing, and John K. really had a thing for young girls. What am I saying had? He still does. John K. has admitted to this too, by the way. He's owned up to the fact that he's had an underage girlfriend. One that he used a lot for not good things. Robin realized that she was being abused and decided to run off. Well, John Cristofalusi just so happened to have this brand new TV show at the time, and what better way to use it than to utilize it as a weapon to get her back? The episode was first revealed in a tweet made by Robin around the times of the original accusation, and we've got some firm proof that this came from John K. So let me show you what he sent to her. Robin posted this in a tweet. When John K. was planning Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon, and trying to get me to come back to work on it, he sent me some terrible outlines. He is the Ren who downloads dirty pictures. I am the Ren who ran away. What's she talking about? Well, let's take a look at this outline that John sent her. Get ready. It's a doozy. The Succubus, a story about John and Robin. What do you think about us writing a cathartic story about some of our crazy adventures together? Maybe we could laugh at ourselves and be happy, Tog Heather. Or is it too weird? Rough ideas, D question mark? Ren embodies both John and Robin's worst traits and drives Stimpy to abject misery. Ren and Stimpy live in a luxurious mansion in the Alps. It's full of clocks that tick madly. Ren stays up late at night, downloading dirty pictures of the web, cackling hideously. At night, Ren turns into a lamprey and sucks Stimpy's soul out of him, little by little. One day, Ren cracks. Ren has a panic attack and decides to leave Stimpy. He hates the Alps and can't take it anymore. Stimpy loses it. He rolls in his litter box, crying. He gets up, tears in his eyes, and begs Ren to stay - there are bits of litter all around his lips. It's no use. Ren leaves to go back where he grew up. He has wonderful memories of the most beautiful place on earth. He goes back to live where he grew up, in a bucket of crap. All his friends and family live there. His dad is Robert Ryan. His mom is Peter Lorre. Stimpy wastes away back in the Alps. Of course, they get back together in the end, but not until unendurable drama takes place. Maybe this could be a movie. We sure could make it intense and highly dramatic. What do you think? We'll make everyone cry. So, egregious spelling errors and what's supposed to be a professional proposal aside, this is really unnerving, especially given the fact that we know what their relationship really was. He was abusive and manipulative, and he clearly wasn't trying to get her to come back to Ren and Stimpy. John was trying to get her to come back to him. But if you think that's all we've got, then you're sadly mistaken. This here is an excerpt from the proposed episode, and it's apparently about John and Robin's real-life breakup. Alright. Stimpy tries to lure Ren into letting him in with presents. He stuffs stuffed dream pets into the slot. The cute dream pets fall inside and surround Ren. Ren squeezes his lips through the slot again and yells at Stimpy.
You can't tempt me with treasures or fame! I want these things no more!
But we're best pals, Ren. We're supposed to give gifts and hang out together.
I'm not your girlfriend! Take the hurt feelings, cry if you have to. I don't feel sorry. That doesn't make me Satan. I may be cruel, but I'm more of a human than you will ever be.
But Ren, I'm a cat.
Shut up! I'm more of a cat than you will ever be. I have 10 lives.
Ren saws off foot. A face appears on Ren's foot.
My own foot, mocking me. Away, face! Go, face, go!
And to top it off, here's a tweet that Robin attached to this. I love those dream pets and fled with all of them. Now they're my daughters. And I'm still more of a cat than he'll ever be. So yeah, John K. was ready and willing to make an episode all about his relationship woes, and a thinly veiled attempt to get one of his victims to come back. Is this the kind of thing we want to see from Ren and Stimpy? Well, judging by this mess, I'd say absolutely, unequivocally, not. So that was Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon, and wow, this thing is just broken. It's as if the people behind it didn't know what made Ren and Stimpy work in the first place, even though they were mostly the same people. It wasn't funny because it was crude for the sake of being crude. It was funny because it had actual substance, and it knew what it was supposed to be and did exactly that. It was more than just wild takes, gross shots, and loud sound effects. It had charm, it had spunk. It was really something unlike anybody had seen at the time. It became the subject of a lot of ripoffs for a reason. Though it does have a few small upsides, this thing was a giant mess. It breaks the original in half and then breaks those halves into quarters and then breaks those quarters into dust. And looking at what we were gonna get if this thing continued, I can promise you that it was gonna get so much worse. Yes, this thing got disowned by the network. Yes, this thing got buried for quite a long time. Yes, this thing got put out of its misery before it knew what hit it, but it still took the legacy of one of the most beloved Nicktoons of all time down with it. Well, folks, thanks for watching the video. What'd you guys think? What'd you think of this redub? Yeah, this thing is a redub of an old and very unpolished video. I hope the audio quality is much better this time, and I streamlined the script a bit more so it's less repetitive and definitely shorter. I say shorter as if, 50 minutes is short? You get what I mean, right? And now it's time to thank our wonderful Patreon people. Masters of Fate, Manny Paredes, Kev, Leaf Storm, and Ryan Williams. And let's not forget our executive producers, Unkale, Blackjack, Edward Haas, H.R. Hoffman, Who Else But Zane, YouTube Milkwad, Albert Robinson, I Am Fove, and Aaron Vasquez. If you would like to be just like these wonderful people and have your name read at the end of every Media Mementos video, then why not consider donating to the Patreon? It doesn't cost a lot, and there's a fancy little link in the description for you to click on. Come on, do it. You don't want it to get lonely, do you? Alright folks, thanks for watching and I'll see you guys next time. And next time, is another video about Adult Party Cartoon, and probably the last. Stay tuned for the 30,000 subscribers special! See you later.